It's March 26, 2019, and Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, better known by his acronym AMLO, arrives at his morning press conference, a daily event known as the Mananera. Among the journalists there that day, a veteran reporter, Lourdes Maldonado, who's traveled more than 2,300 kilometers from Tijuana to Mexico City, with a request for the president.
Vengo también aquí para pedirle apoyo, ayuda y justicia laboral, porque hasta temo por mi vida.
She was right to fear for her life. Less than 2 years later, she was dead.
Maldonado's case is particularly important because she had recognized the state apparatus at her disposal. She talked to the president, she asked for the state's protection. Nevertheless, she was killed.
Y no obstante fue asesinada.
We have not yet been able to understand why Maldonado is no longer with us, but we know the attacks against journalists are not directed at just any journalist, but towards those who are investigating corruption, human rights abuses, or cases related to narco-politics.
Con la narcopolítica.
And there are clear patterns at play. Whenever a journalist is killed in Mexico, the guessing game begins. Was the murder committed by a drug cartel, ordered by a kingpin threatened by the reporting? Or was it an agent of the state, a police force corrupted by the drug trade, or ordered by a politician in the cartel's pocket? Lourdes Maldonado was one of 4 media workers killed in January. Another, Roberto Toledo, worked for a regional online news outlet, Monitor Michoacán, known for its reporting on local government corruption.
Nosotros no estamos armados, nosotros no traemos armas. Nuestra única defensa es una pluma.
Announcing Toledo's death on social media, his boss, Armando Linares, said their reporting had drawn unwanted attention.
El equipo de Monitor Michoacán ha venido sufriendo una serie de amenazas de muerte. El día de hoy, finalmente, estas amenazas se cumplieron.
2 months later, Linares was murdered. It's now 8 killings and counting, this year alone. And when the cases are investigated, another pattern emerges, one of impunity.
In many murder cases, they only get as far as investigating the messenger. They don't go after the person who ordered the killing. So it's unclear where the attack really comes from, and that generates increasing impunity.
Que en México, cuando matas a un periodista, nada pasa.
In Mexico, when you kill a journalist, nothing happens. That's because more than 50% of these attacks are committed by state agents, and the state is unwilling to investigate itself. The authorities try to justify themselves by saying that these attacks against the press are just collateral damage given the violence this country suffers.
The truth is that neither citizens nor journalists trust the federal or state prosecutors, because that is where impunity comes from.
It's been that way for 2 decades in Mexico, under multiple governments, and journalists are still endangered. In 2012, President Felipe Calderón established a program called the Mechanismo, designed to protect reporters and human rights workers. However, the Mechanismo, which relies mainly on relocating journalists to other parts of the country, was criticised then, as it is now, for being unreliable and underfunded. Remember Lourdes Maldonado? She had been enrolled in the Mechanismo for more than a month when she was murdered in January. Her colleague, Armando Linares, was still signing up to the program when he was killed in March. We contacted numerous journalists to ask about their experiences under the Mechanismo. Just one of them agreed to speak with us, and only under certain conditions. Because of fears for her security, she sent us voice messages. I asked her why she decided to join the program.
Because at that moment, it was the only hand outstretched to save my life. I've seen some serious things, but I overlooked them all because they weren't impacting my work. I still felt safe. I never felt my life was in danger like it is now. For now, the Mechanismo has worked, but that's because I'm far, far away from home. I've lost everything. What bothers me about the Mechanismo is that in order to protect you, you have to run. But the criminals get to stay on the streets, close to your home, close to your family.
And under AMLO, the conditions have grown worse. Attacks on journalists are up by 85%.
Buenos días, presidente. Mireya López, del programa Listening Post de la cadena Al Jazeera.
So we sent our producer in Mexico City to the Mananera to ask the president directly why journalism in the country remains so dangerous, with more and more attacks, given the promise he made in 2018 to end corruption and impunity.
¿Qué ha pasado con esa promesa?
What happened to that promise, President? Do you think that the lack of impunity has in fact fueled more attacks and murders of journalists?
¿Ataques contra ellos?
Your question is about these unfortunate events. My reply is that there is no impunity, and we are working every day in order to protect citizens. We have inherited a very complicated situation. It takes time to change things, and especially to tackle the problem of these murders. We are very sorry about the assassinations of these journalists, and we are investigating them. There are open files on all their cases, and in most of them, people have already been arrested. Both the murderers and the orchestrators are now in prison.
That last statement is factually incorrect. There have been arrests in some cases, but the vast majority of journalist murders result in no charges or convictions. Not that Mexican voters seem overly bothered by that. The president remains hugely popular. He won a referendum earlier this month with an overwhelming majority. AMLO's populist appeal plays well with voters, as does his accessibility. His Mananera represents a complete departure from his predecessors, who were more elusive, less visible.
During the Calderón administration, the combination of the National Guard and the army meant it was impossible to get close to the president. You would be attacked or taken away. Under Peña Nieto, it was worse.
Gracias, presidente.
Now you can speak out more. The mañaneras are an opportunity to ask questions, even if they don't want you to.
Si tiene información de lo que está pasando en Chihuahua.
Las mañaneras son
The mañaneras are important moments of dialogue with the president. But we have to be very careful in thinking that what the president says is an exercise in transparency. The mañaneras are a way of controlling information and public debate in Mexico.
Es un círculo vertical.
It's a hierarchy in which he has the power, and there have been many instances when a journalist has asked a question and is attacked by the president himself, then threatened on social media and even on the streets.
Incluso en las calles.
Son muy pocos los periodistas, mujeres y hombres, que están cumpliendo con el noble oficio de informar.
Taking potshots from their president. That too comes with a job for journalists in Mexico. And despite everything, the threats, the attacks, the many faces of adversity, they're still on it.
Pues yo recién salía de Reforma.
I'd just left my job at the newspaper Reforma, and I thought, actually, I wouldn't want other journalists to go through what I've been through. Being told I had to leave the state, my house robbed, a gun held to my head. Now, I've set up a journalists' network here in Sonora, and we've started training ourselves. We are on the right path, but I don't see a clear light.
Si tú me preguntas que si el futuro.
If you ask me if the future of journalism in Mexico is in the hands of the state, I would say no. I don't see a chance for its survival there. I see a chance in journalism itself. I believe that journalism is resilient.
Sido resiliente.